Hi, welcome to my channel, True Crime with Gael, where horror for the holidays is taking place. Thanks so much for stopping by. I can't believe that I have over 300 subscribers. Thank you so much for listening. I have a massive appreciation for all of your support. I really like making these videos, and I'm glad that you found value in taking the time to watch them. If you aren't subscribed and you do enjoy the video, please like, comment, or subscribe. Alright, let's begin. Filipina native Alice and American Michael Williams had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. Alice was a homemaker and a housekeeper, and Michael was a chief petty officer in the United States Navy. In 1998, their eldest daughter, Jennifer Williams, was 18 years old, and their son, Michael Jr., was 16. Christina Marie Williams was born on May 1, 1985, in Okinawa Prefecture, Japan. She was the youngest of the family's 3 children, and in 1998, she was 13 years old. The family had traveled extensively because of Michael's military career. They had lived at Yokosuka Naval Base in Japan, and had also spent some time living in the Philippines and Hawaii. They arrived in Seaside, California in 1997, where Michael was stationed at the Fleet Numerical Meteorology and Oceanography Center as a meteorologist. It was the first time the family had lived in the mainland United States, and the family had settled into a home on the 500 block of Nijmegen Road. Christina Marie Williams was pretty shy when she first arrived at Seaside, but she had started to come out of her shell and make friends as the summer of 1998 rolled in. She had just completed 7th grade at Fitch Middle School, where she sang in the chorus and earned good grades. Her father, Michael, said that he was reminded of his daughter's academic promise when her report card arrived at the end of the year. She had 3 A's, 2 B's, and a C+. She loved the Spice Girls, Beanie Babies, animals, and making artwork for her room. After school, she would often sit in front of the computer in her parents' bedroom and download images of horses and dogs from the internet. She turned those pictures into a growing collection of animal collages, her own personal art gallery. She had a special affection for animals, and she expressed interest in someday becoming a veterinarian. Neighbors knew Christina only as the young girl who brought in the mail each morning with a smile. But family members recalled Christina's bright, bubbly personality. Music was a major part of her life. She was an avid fan of pop singers like Mariah Carey and Janet Jackson, and her father fondly recalled taking her to see Spice World, the Spice Girls movie. Her mother, Alice, said that she was quiet and loving and thoughtful. Christina's 18-year-old sister, Jennifer, described her as the most innocent little girl you could meet. Her father said that she was as close to a perfect daughter as you could get. He also said that everything she did was helpful and courteous. She worked hard and was conscientious, punctual, and reliable, and she was always concerned about her family and their well-being. Christina disappeared on June 12, 1998. It was a relaxing Friday in the first week of her summer vacation. She had spent the day at home, making Filipino rice cakes with her mother, and playing with Greg, the mixed-breed collie she'd picked out from the pound less than 2 months earlier on her birthday. An hour before sunset, at about 7:30 p.m., while her mother Alice napped on the couch, Christina grabbed her brother's Raiders jacket as he played computer games and left her house. She wanted to walk her dog, Greg, on a long road behind her home. Christina never returned. About an hour later, Greg was found wandering around in front of the family house, his leash trailing behind him. Her mother didn't expect Christina to be gone for more than 20 minutes. This was out of character for her, because she was predictable in always letting her parents know where she was going. Her brother Michael Jr. also said that she was really attached to her dog, so to find him and not her was really disturbing to them. Basketball fans were watching Antoine Carr lead the Utah Jazz to a Game 5 victory over the Chicago Bulls in the NBA Finals. Three dogs next door, riled up by one of the noisy basketball parties, were barking continuously. If Christina had screamed, no one would have heard it, her father said. Alice Williams tried calling her husband at work, but he didn't pick up because he was at a conference in Monterey. He arrived home about 90 minutes after Christina had disappeared. When his family told him what had happened, he immediately drove to the nearby Fort Ord police station. Witnesses first told investigators that just before Christina went missing from her home, two men, one slim and the other one heavy, were seen in the area in a four-door Ford Granada with gray primer spots. Investigators also said a woman saw Christina sitting in a gray car near her house, looking frightened. Earlier in the day of Christina's disappearance, a jogger had been harassed by two men in a car believed to be the same one Christina was later spotted in. Sketches of people suspected of the abduction were widely released in the media, but they didn't help identify either of the suspects. Ultimately, the FBI dropped the two men as suspects. Christina's disappearance was a bomb that destroyed any sense of normalcy the Williams once had. They were struck reeling in a nightmare that would never end. Christina's older sister, Jennifer, who had previously planned to spend the time with her boyfriend in Missouri before joining the Air Force in the winter, instead began sleeping in Christina's room. And she and Michael Jr. rarely went out. There was almost always someone in the house, just in case Christina called. An outing to a nearby garlic festival became a chance to hand out flyers to the thousands of visitors, rather than the feast of food and music they had anticipated. Before Christina disappeared, the family hadn't gone to church in 3 or 4 years, but with her vanishing, they began attending every Sunday. Jennifer said that you have to be religious because that's your only hope. That's our only other answer is God. Eventually, Alice went back to work as a hotel housekeeper, which helped take her mind off the investigations. All the while, Alice remained optimistic. I think she's alive, and someone is hiding her or taking care of her, she said. I don't think she's hurt or something. I think she's okay. On June 15th, 1998, FBI agent Lack said that he and other agents decided to enter into the investigation. They found that Presidio of Monterey police were treating Williams as a runaway who left her home voluntarily. But Agent Lack said it appeared to him to be a stranger abduction case because she had never lived in the continental United States in her life. Her father said that Christina never would have run away and that she had no issues with drugs or alcohol and had no history with depression or running away from home. Her parents said she had just started to make friends in the area and never went anywhere without asking. In addition to this, her military identification and money were still in her room when she vanished. And finally, she wouldn't have left her beloved dog, Greg. Based on this information, the FBI came to the conclusion that this was an abduction. Oakland Raiders running back Napoleon Kaufman taped a public service announcement for Christina when he learned that she was wearing a Raiders shirt when she disappeared. Clint Eastwood, Reggie Jackson, and Mariah Carey also made televised pleas, and her parents appeared on Larry King Live. Her story also had been featured twice on America's Most Wanted, which prompted 2 sightings in Greensboro, North Carolina, of a girl witnesses believed to be Christina. Massive local searches were also conducted, and the FBI offered a reward for $100,000. On July 5, 1998, just weeks after Christina disappeared, Ranger Ronnie Lewis of the Bureau of Land Management Law Enforcement gave a report on Charles Allen Holyfield to the FBI command post. He did this because of what had been going on and his prior knowledge of Holyfield. The ranger knew that he was a twice convicted rapist whose previous victims were also petite teenage girls in the Fort Ord area. 7 months later, on January 12, 1999, Erica Murphy, a botany researcher, and a co-worker were conducting an invasive species survey on land belonging to the University of California Natural Reserve System. While they worked, Erica discovered Christina's remains, which were under some branches, and ran to her car to call the police. Christina was found near Imjin Road, close to where she was last seen. The location was a surprise, as the area had previously been searched, which led people to believe that her body had been placed there after the area had been searched. Erica had been walking on Old Country Road, about half a mile from Imjin Road, and only about 500 yards off the paved road, in a clearing surrounded by dense brush and grass. Police arrived and saw faded blue jean material, a long bone, possibly a femur, and a clump of dark hair. They taped off the area as a crime scene. About 10 yards away from where the initial remains were found, a skull and torso were collected, which included shreds of a striped shirt, a bra, and blue jeans. Branches were also laid over her skull. Her remains were confirmed to be hers through dental records. The medical examiner was unable to determine her cause of death because of how much her body had decomposed. However, the circumstances of Christina's disappearance and her death pointed towards a probable homicide. Investigators and a Navy chaplain delivered the grim news of the identification to Christina's parents on the afternoon of Alice Williams' 47th birthday. The family remained in seclusion for nearly 3 hours before emerging to talk to the press. Charles Allen Holyfield was almost immediately identified as a suspect in Christina's assault and death. The night Christina disappeared, Holyfield, who was then in his mid-30s, had left his job in a cabinet shop in Sand City early, telling his boss he had to meet his girlfriend to look at an apartment in Carmel Valley. The owner of the apartment building later testified he had had an appointment scheduled to meet Holyfield and his girlfriend that same evening at 6 p.m., but that the couple never showed up. The next day, they made new plans to view the apartment. A man who lived in one of the units there testified that he had his door open that summer morning and overheard Holyfield and the girlfriend in a pretty serious argument about where Holyfield had been the night before. The tenant testified that the woman was demanding to know where Holyfield had been, and that Holyfield told her, "None of your business." 2 weeks after Christina disappeared, Holyfield visited a different girlfriend at her job at Pelican Pizza. When he came in, he asked her if she would vouch for his whereabouts. She looked at him and asked him what he did wrong. Holyfield refused to tell her, so she refused to give him an alibi. He told her that he would just ask his other girlfriend for the alibi and left. The girlfriend that was seen arguing with Holyfield at the apartment building agreed to alibi him and claimed that it was because she was terrified of what he would do to her if she said no. The same Ranger Ronnie Lewis, who had filed a report on Holyfield to the FBI months earlier, had encountered the couple twice in restricted areas on Fort Ord. During the first encounter in the fall of 1997, Lewis later testified that he found Holyfield and his girlfriend that gave him the alibi, fishing in a man-made pond. He told them it was illegal to fish there, but before he could run their driver's licenses to see if they were wanted for anything, he was called to assist an injured bicyclist on the Salinas side of Fort Ord. On the second occasion, he found them fishing at the same pond. He asked for their identification, and after running checks on them, he found the woman had an active restraining order against Holyfield. Holyfield was arrested that day for violating the restraining order. In December 2002, FBI agent Lack interviewed Holyfield. Agent Lack said Holyfield told him the night Williams went missing, he was at the home of another girlfriend, and that he and the girlfriend and her mother ate dinner together and watched television after. Holyfield told him that he had never seen Christina before, but he admitted to spending a lot of time in the area where Christina's body was found. In April 2017, Holyfield was formally charged with Christina's murder after her underwear was retested for DNA evidence by the California Department of Justice Crime Laboratory, and sperm cells were located. The DNA profile developed from the sperm cells matched Holyfield exactly. He was already in prison, serving a third strike sentence of 25 years to life at the Correctional Training Facility in Soledad for attempted kidnapping and making criminal threats against a woman in September 1998. That attempt took place just 3 months after Christina had disappeared.
I talked with Christina's father, Michael Williams, at length this afternoon about the DA's announcement.
All that stuff just started to flood back. All those memories started to flood back of going through it. It's opening the scab back up that you thought was healed. Somebody just is starting to slowly rip it open again. And if we want justice, then this is the steps that need to be taken. We want this to have been done many, many years ago, obviously. Him to be found convicted if the evidence presents itself, which I'm sure it will.
This has been very, very difficult for Michael Williams and his wife, Alice.
The Williams family moved to Florida several months after Christina's death. In 2017, when the DA's office announced they had enough evidence to take Charles Holyfield to court, the Williams family was touring the States in an RV to raise money for the Missing Children's Fund. I find it interesting that Christina's parents stayed together after losing their daughter. So often you hear of parents splitting up because the pain of losing a child eclipses everything else. Why do some parents split up and others stay together after the loss of a child? I was shocked to find that in a 2006 study commissioned by the Compassionate Friends, parental divorce following the death of a child was found to be around 16%. The findings were consistent with an earlier study conducted by the group that showed equally low divorce rates among bereaved parents. In addition to this, less than half of those who were divorced following the death of their child felt that the death had contributed to the disintegration of their marriage. There are 4 significant factors that contribute to marital stress. The first are real and performative gender differences in grieving styles. The second is the quality of the marriage prior to the child's death. The third is the cause and circumstances of the child's death. And the fourth is the displacement of anger and blame onto the spouse. Experts agree that maintaining the ability to tolerate a partner's grieving style, keeping open lines of communication, developing a support system beyond that of one's partner, and making a commitment to remaining married in spite of the stress, all contribute to marital survival. Although there is nothing positive about the death of a child itself, some parents have experienced a deepening of their marital relationship. The strengthening of their relationships stem from the actual struggle to cope with the tragedy and its aftermath, and not from the loss itself. Coping with the tragedy is what creates a new normal. The struggle to cope forces parents to survive and brings about some positive changes, whether it is courage to persist in living, a deeper compassion for others, or a genuine desire to help others. As terrible as it is, the death of a child serves as a shared trauma experience, which can have the effect of bringing a couple closer together. Nevertheless, it must not be forgotten that each parent must bear their own pain. They have lost the same child, but the grieving process for each will be unique. Sometimes there will be nothing left inside and nothing left to give, even to their partner. There will be moments where they cannot meet each other's needs, or anyone's needs, at that moment in time. Grieving parents are able to support each other sporadically, but they each feel a profound sense of isolation. Grieving people tend to focus on their feelings, their needs, and their day, which is normal, so they have little energy left to invest in others, which would include their partner. Whether a couple's relationship survives depends on several factors. The first factor is how strong the relationship was prior to the loss. The second is the cause and circumstances surrounding the loss. If the non-supervising parent feels the supervising parent had been irresponsible, the ability to forgive will be much more challenging than if it's clear that the cause of death was truly beyond anyone's control. The third is the coping skills each person had prior to the loss. Those who have the ability to process difficult emotions or circumstances are likely to successfully reach a point of healing. These skills can be taught. So even if parents didn't have good coping skills prior to the loss, they can learn them. However, they must take care to avoid self-destructive behavior, such as falling into addiction or other forms of self-harm or abuse. The final major factor in whether or not a relationship can survive this sort of trauma is how much support the couple gets in terms of family, friends, and some form of therapy or support group. Additional advice on practices that can help are keeping a journal, reading relevant books and articles about how to process the type of loss you suffered from, realizing that your grief isn't on a time limit, and surrounding yourself with caring and non-judgmental people who don't make you feel like your grief should have a time limit. I've never experienced trauma as profound as losing a child, but I have experienced depression that comes and goes. And I know what helps me is being creative. Writing poetry or stories or songs helps me ground myself and gives me the strength to reach for the light again. Another thing that helps me is laughing, either with friends or from a movie or TV series. Have you ever experienced any sort of significant grief? What helps you feel better when you're at your lowest? I'd love to hear your advice in the comments below. Holyfield faced life in prison without the possibility of parole if convicted. Judge Pamela Butler heard the trial after Holyfield waived his right to a jury and opted for a bench trial in exchange for prosecutors taking the death penalty off the table. The district attorney's office entered into this agreement after consulting with the Williams family, who expressed their desire for closure and finality of the judgment in their daughter's case. The decision was also partly based on an executive order issued in March 2019 by Governor Gavin Newsom, which created an effective moratorium on the death penalty in California. This agreement not only waived Holyfield's rights to a jury trial, it also took away his rights to writs and appeals. In short, Holyfield would not be able to appeal a guilty verdict. The judge's final judgment would be the final judgment. Holyfield's 2 prior sexual assault convictions involved him attacking and strangling and raping teenage girls walking alone in Monterey County in 1979 and 1983. Both of those victims took the stand against Holyfield and testified at trial about their assaults. This is a trigger warning. I will be recounting their testimonies next. Denise B. testified she was raped in May 1979 when she was 18 years old in Marina. She said she decided to go for a walk to Seaside along the bike path. When she got about half a mile down the path, she said she was jumped from behind and thrown to the ground. She started to cry as she testified about Holyfield choking her and holding her down in the dirt. She told the court that he said he'd give her 60 seconds to spit the dirt out. Denise B. testified that Holyfield asked if she went to Fitch Middle School, the school Christina attended, or Seaside High School. When she said she went to Fitch, she testified he asked if she knew certain Fitch teachers. She said she found his photo in a Fitch yearbook, which helped police identify Holyfield. Dinah J. testified she went for a walk near Hopkins Marine Station, close to the Monterey Pacific Grove border, the night she was raped in April 1983. A stranger grabbed me around my neck, she said. He was choking me so I couldn't breathe. I knew there was a possibility of me dying. Dinah J. said she did not recognize Holyfield in the courtroom, but was able to identify an old photo of him as her assailant. She testified he dragged her away from the street into some bushes and raped her before tying her up and forcing her into his car. She said he drove them near Seaside High School, took her out of the car, and raped her again. Dinah J. testified she told Holyfield to pray and gave him the name of a social worker at the Salvation Army. Inexplicably, he then drove her to the Salvation Army office, and he admitted to raping her. She said her mother and the police arrived at the office together, and she was then taken to the police station and the hospital. She went back to Seaside the next day with a detective, and they found her underwear that was left behind. Former Pacific Grove Police Chief Carl Miller, who was a detective at the time, testified about his work on the 1983 case. He said he was the on-call detective who responded that night, though it was another detective who went back to Seaside with Dinah J. the next morning. Miller testified that Holyfield admitted to raping the girl while speaking to him at the Pacific Grove Police Department. Denise B.'s and Dinah J.'s testimonies gave listeners a graphic and horrific glimpse into what Christina Williams had most likely also experienced in her last moments on Earth. In March of 2020, after a 10-day bench trial, 59-year-old Charles Allen Holyfield was found guilty of the 1998 kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder of 13-year-old Christina Williams, and was immediately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Holyfield was not only convicted of first-degree murder. The judge also found two special circumstance allegations: that the murder was committed during the commission of a kidnapping, and also during the commission of a lewd and lascivious act on a child under the age of 14. The judge asked Holyfield if he wanted to speak, but he showed little emotion, shook his head, and said no. Holyfield is reportedly serving his sentence at Mule Creek State Prison. After the verdict was passed and the sentence announced, Michael Williams said, "What's really nice is the fact that it's over. This is the end and no appeals. So this is the last we're going to hear about this case, and the last we're going to hear about Charles Holyfield." Finally, Michael said that his family was ready to move on after the conviction and sentencing. He also thanked the various law enforcement agencies and individuals in the community who had offered their support. The city of Marina erected a memorial in Christina's honor, located at 15520 Imjin Road, across from Preston Park.
Today, she is still remembered on this spot, including this plaque. It reads, "A gift from God, Christina will always be remembered as a loving daughter to her parents and a compassionate sister to our community. May each of us do everything possible to prevent this from happening to any of our children ever again."
At the University of California, Berkeley, a philanthropist established a scholarship in her name. After the trial, family members paid tribute to Christina the day after Holyfield was found guilty. They stopped by her memorial to pay their respects. A pastor also stopped by to pray and encourage the family as they honored her memory. Christina Williams was an innocent child, but even if she were an adult who wasn't a stranger to sin, she still wouldn't have deserved what Charles Holyfield put her through. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It's incredibly unfortunate that she had to cross paths with this scraggly fucking excuse for a human being. I can't imagine how she felt when the last thing she experienced was having to look into those cavernous pits he calls eyes. So, what should you do if you're being attacked by someone much larger than you? If you're an adult, I always support making sure you have a conceal and carry permit, if they are available in your area. If you're uncomfortable around guns, a taser, pepper spray or mace, and knife are close seconds. And of course, make sure that these are legal to carry in the area that you live in. However, these items can malfunction, and guns can misfire and run out of bullets. So the best advice I can think of is to learn some sort of self-defense. If you don't have time to take self-defense classes, here is a photo of the weakest points on the human body. I would recommend going for the eyes, nose, throat, groin, and knees. If I do end up having children, I will be starting them in some sort of self-defense class as young as possible. Boxing, judo, Kali, Krav Maga, Taekwondo, wrestling. They'll be able to pursue any other interests they have, but learning self-defense will be non-negotiable. I do understand that these classes can get expensive really quickly though, so if you can't afford them, make sure that they know the basics. We didn't have self-defense classes growing up, but my parents were always stressing to us how dangerous strangers could be. My mom made sure to remind us time and time again that if someone tried to touch us in an inappropriate way or tried to kidnap us, we were to scream as loud as possible and fight as hard as we could with anything that was within arm's reach. She made sure we knew to do whatever we could to leave a mark and run. Also, some of my favorite memories were watching America's Most Wanted with my father, and I learned a lot from John Walsh too. Another thing that I would recommend is getting 1 or 2 puppies when your children are young, and also investing in quality training so that they will grow up into large and capable guard dogs. This way, when your child is old enough to walk the dogs alone, you'll have some security and knowing that those dogs will fuck up anyone trying to mess with them. In my research, I found that the breeds at the top of the list for family guard dogs are German Shepherds, Rottweilers, Doberman Pinschers, Boxers, and Giant Schnauzers. I want to make it clear that I'm not judging the Williams family in any way. They're a beautiful family with amazing, loving parents. I'm just sharing what I learned from this case. What are your go-to tips for self-defense? I'd love to hear your advice in the comments below. Thanks so much for visiting my channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. I'll be posting mostly true crime, but also other mysteries and conspiracy theories. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you soon. I hope your holiday seasons are going well, and that you all have peaceful and fulfilling weeks. Bye.